African news update on top Accolade News. Tonight, Africa's headlines paint a canvas of crisis and resilience, from military generals seizing power in politics to labor striking at the heart of oil production. The continent is testing its limits. We're tracking the flashpoints where power clashes with the people and the economic shifts that promise both growth and peril. This is the week that the streets spoke louder than the states. The headlines: Rajoelina turns to the military as protests rock Madagascar. Ugandan court petitions seeks release of detained Kenyan activists linked to Bobi Wine. Nigeria loses 600,000 barrels as Dangote Refinery strike halts production. World Bank upgrades Sub-Saharan Africa's growth forecast to 3.8%. Starting in an East African nation gripped by fury, Madagascar's President Andry Rajoelina has appointed an army general as prime minister to kill nationwide youth-led protests demanding his resignation. The move follows weeks of unrest over corruption, joblessness, and power cuts that have left at least 22 dead. Opposition figures dismissed the appointment as futile, warning it deepens the government's militarization. When leaders stop listening, even generals can't silence the crowd. Across the border in Uganda, the fight for political freedom takes a sharper turn. Ugandan human rights lawyers have filed a high court petition demanding the release of Kenyan activist Nicholas Oyo and Bob Njagi, allegedly held at a military facility after joining opposition leader Bobi Wine's campaign. The case targets top security chiefs, including General Mahozi, accusing them of unlawful detention. Right groups warn the arrest signal a growing crackdown on political dissent and cross-border activism. As one advocate noted, when justice must beg for the living, the law itself is in chains. A pivot from conflict in politics to the conflict in the economy. Nigeria's oil output plunged over 600,000 barrels after a 3-day nationwide strike by refinery workers protesting mass layoffs at the Dangote Refinery, crippled operations, NNPC confirmed. The disruption underscores growing tension between unions and management over job security, with regional fuel supplies tightening. The walkout threatens to derail Nigeria's fragile oil recovery. When labor and industry clash, the nation's lifeblood runs dry. Beyond the politics and protests, there's movement in the markets. Sub-Saharan Africa's economies are projected to expand by 3.8% this year, up from April's 3.5%, as easing inflation and stable currencies spur investment and consumption, the World Bank said in its latest Africa Polls report. Major economies like Nigeria, Ethiopia, and Ivory Coast received growth upgrades, with regional inflation now averaging below 4%. However, the bank warned that high debt and weak job creation could undermine progress. The real growth test lies not in numbers, but in jobs that secure lives. You're watching the African News Update on Top Accolade News. Do stay with us. Still to come. Thanks for staying with us. Now to Eswatini, where controversy swells over a quiet deal that has loud implications. Eswatini has received 10 deportees from the US, despite an ongoing court battle and mounting criticism from right groups who accuse the government of bypassing parliament in a secretive $5.1 million deal to host up to 160 deportees. Authorities insist the arrival posed no public threat, but activists says the move undermines the rule of law in Africa's last absolute monarchy. When justice bows to politics, democracy stands on borrowed time. From a crisis of governance to a crisis of nature, the Nile once again overflows its bank. More than 30 people have died and thousands are displaced after devastating floods swept through Sudan's Nile state, submerging homes and farmlands as the blue and white Nile rivers burst their banks. Heavy rains, poor planning, and limited rescue resources have worsened the crisis while Egypt blames Ethiopia's new dam for rising water levels, a claim Addis Ababa denies. As Sudan reels from another climate disaster, one truth echoes through the flood waters. When planning fails, nature writes the headlines. Amid hardship, the continent's cultural heartbeat is louder than ever, this time from the global stage of Afrobeats. Spotify has launched its global Afrobeat playlist to honor the genre's explosive global reach, with massive listener growth in Asia and Latin America, and a 135% rise in Afrobeat top playlists since 2020. Driven by Gen Z curation and fan passion, the playlist cements Afrobeat's place as a cultural force beyond Africa. And finally tonight, a story of progress from the pitch, where football becomes a tool of nation building. The South Sudan Football Federation has launched its first ever coach educator assessment course in Juba, marking a milestone in the nation's football development. The initiative aimed to equip local coaches with modern skills to nurture young talent. CAF instructor Mr. Steven hailed the move as vital for producing qualified professionals who can elevate the game across all levels. In a country rebuilding true sports, South Sudan's dream of football now begins in the classroom. That's the pulse, Africa's heartbeat, resilient and raw, urging us towards unity and action. In the vision's shadow, let's amplify the voices pushing for tomorrow. I am Ojorumi Okocha, and this is the African News Update on Top Accolade News, keeping you connected to the pulse of the continent.